Well, good morning and good afternoon to everyone. My name is John Burwell. I'm the Global Simulation Training Manager lead at Varjo, and it's my pleasure to be with you today to talk about U.S. Air Force pilot training. So around a dozen years ago, the U.S. Air Force recognized that they had a serious challenge in terms of pilot training coming up, largely due to the retirement of Vietnam War era pilots, as well as a major growth in commercial aviation that was pulling pilots from the military into the civilian side. They recognized that this was going to be a critical training need for them, and so they looked at some different ways of doing this, using interactive multimedia, using emerging virtual and mixed reality technologies. And so what we're going to do today is we're going to provide you with some information about that, and talk through the steps that have happened in there, talk about the current status, and then where that's going. So assisting me today, we have got a great panel for you. We have Major Alex Horn from the Defense Innovation Unit within the Office of Secretary of Defense. So his organization is largely driving a lot of the innovations from the government side. So he will be giving you some of the government perspective on that. And then we have my pleasure to have TJ Mosier present with us today. So he's the Aviation Business Unit Lead at Vertex Solutions. And you will see as we go through here that Vertex is a small business that's been intimately involved in producing these technologies and as these progress along. Quick note from our sponsors. So Varjo is really pleased to welcome you here today. As many of you know, we are a producer of enterprise class HMDs, helmet mounted displays that are used as part of these various programs. We really differentiate by providing human eye resolution solutions so that you can actually see and experience what you can in the real world, while you're immersed in a headset, as well as providing mixed reality solutions where you can mix real and virtual content to provide advanced training capabilities. I'd also like to take the opportunity to introduce Vertex today, so I'll turn it over to TJ to talk a little bit about Vertex.
Yeah, hey, thanks, JB. Before I joined Vertex, I finished out a career at the 19th Air Force, and Vertex was one of the companies that we worked with. And I really thought they were executing, and I thought it'd be a good place for me to start my career in retirement. And Vertex is right now kind of the leading developer, leading solutions provider for all the immersive training devices, really across the DoD. Over 250 of these devices. It's been a company that's been around for 25 years, always delivering training in the best possible medium available. And in 2015, they made a big pivot towards the XR or extended reality way to deliver training. And that turned out to be a good bet. Just kind of going forward, it's based out of Niceville, Florida, and we're just continuing to grow. So it's been a fun transition. And it was one of the things that we were selected for was the initial pilot training transformation, which was from DIU. And I think our next speaker can tell you about what DIU brings.
Yeah, hey everyone. So Major Alex Horn from Defense Innovation Unit and also representing Air Education Training Command as the liaison to AETC from DIU. So DIU, for those that aren't familiar with the organization, really specializes in trying to serve as that bridge, as you can see on this slide, between the Department of Defense and industry, and specifically the industry partners that generally don't have that ease of access to working on government contracts. So DIU leverages other transaction authority to bring non-traditional defense contractors or traditional onto these rapid prototype contracts to field capabilities that are relatively high maturity, such as extended reality technology to solve DoD problems. And really this pilot training transformation program, as we've been calling it, has become one of DIU's exemplar projects where we've been able to rapidly field some really exciting technology for the U.S. Air Force, but then also evolve this technology over time and kind of try to keep pace with advancements in this specifically technology domain to deliver, all the interesting innovations that are coming out of the commercial gaming industry and stuff like that, right to the Air Force and get them into pilots' hands to train pilots, we think, better, faster, and cheaper. So again, that's what we'll be getting to talk to you guys about today, and the role that DIU and some of these other companies have played in trying to solve this pretty critical Air Force problem that has emerged over the past decade or so.
Well, thanks, Alex. So we're going to go ahead and jump into the material here next, but we would love to have interaction and questions from the audience. And what we typically do with these is we'll take the questions at the end. So please feel free as we're going through the material to click on the Q&A button and type in your questions, and then we will address those at the end. So I'll go ahead and turn it back over to TJ to talk in more detail about the challenges and the requirements.
Yeah, thanks again, JB. Yeah, so, kind of going back to my ACSC days or whatever, but, the Simon Sinek, start with why, and, JB alluded to it earlier, but, the pilot shortage is really kind of a global problem. You kind of see on the left here, each continent, the particular numbers that are shown here, 130,000 pilots short, between 2021 and 2040, and that's just in North America, and that kind of goes all the way across. And for all the reasons that JB described, and these also apply to the United States Air Force and the Navy and really the DoD wide. And the problem with being short on pilots is you can't just go out and hire new pilots. You really have to train them, and that training takes both time and money. And so it's not a problem you can work out of really quickly. And you have to really allocate resources towards it. And you kind of see on the right there, the cost to train pilots. I know when I went through training, and probably close for when Alex went through training, it was $1 million education. And as you can see now, those prices have gone up quite a bit, to fully train and get someone fully mission capable, especially in a fighter or an advanced aircraft is very expensive. So you're always looking for ways to, find efficiencies in that training, to either accomplish that training in a smarter, more effective way that is also more efficient. And that's really what the kind of started to frame the problem set that the Air Force was dealing with a few years ago. So if you go to the next slide.
TJ, real quick, do you mind if I add something on that
Sure.
that last slide? It is interesting to note that, so I'm a C-17 pilot myself, and you look down there at the very, very bottom, C-17 pilot only costs about $1 million to train. And I would like to say it's not because we're less important than the others. It's actually that because it's a more modern aircraft, and they've been able to, or the simulator systems were so advanced at the time that we actually do almost our entire initial qualification in the sim, and we only actually get 3 flights before we're qualified, C-17 co-pilot. So obviously for single seat aircraft, fighter aircraft, bomber aircraft, that's not really possible. But, you can see just that dramatic difference in the cost to train when you can, put most of the training in a virtual world. So, as we show what we're working on here with these even lighter weight simulation solutions, we hope to be able to kind of drive all of that over to the left to make it a lot cheaper to train pilots for all these aircraft platforms.
Yeah, and that's a good point. I mean, obviously, DoD has been using, trainers, simulators for quite a while. I mean, really all the way back to the 1920s and 30s with the link trainers. But, so we know that model works. But to your point, to make that more accessible, lighter weight, and less expensive, all those things definitely help. And so, also to frame kind of the problem, the Air Force was kind of looking at a couple of things that really kind of set the groundwork or whatever of what we had to of this problems that we had to solve. And one of those were you had the pilots that were coming in, the student pilots that were coming in, and the student pilots were coming in. They had a certain set of expectations. Most of their life they had spent in the digital world. And, the reality is when they showed up at UPT, they were given a poster, and not that long ago, that poster was in black and white. And one of the big innovations was to go to a color poster. And, that was really, and a stack of books. And that was kind of about the only thing they had really to train. And so, this picture kind of shows that, and it kind of creates kind of a trust gap, between that. The Air Force is not always the most at the cutting edge of some of the technology that's out there, but an average 22 to 25-year-old has been using that for quite a while. And my boss used to say that with a credit card and a laptop you can do anything in the world, and with a common access card or CAC card and on a government network you can do almost nothing in this world. So and that's not too far from the truth. There's just a lot of things that bog down networks and et cetera. So one of them was kind of getting over that kind of technology gap that was there, and that trust gap that had come between what people expected and what we actually delivered. You also got production. We talked about it earlier, but this is kind of a shrunk version of the red line, blue line. See, the red line is the amount of pilots that we need in the Air Force to make it work properly. And then the blue line, and you can kind of see the decline over the past few years into the past decade, really decades of that, or probably a decade and a half anyway, of that. And you can see that the blue line there, was continuing to diverge away at the production rates that we had. And even to get to the production rates we needed would only keep it in line. And that's the yellow line that's there. And then combine that with, aging aircraft that are being divested, specifically the T1. Now you have even less like training platforms, less ways to actually, train your pilots. So, these were kind of wicked problems that we had to solve. And so one of the thoughts with to get after this from the Chief of Staff of the Air Force, all the way down to AATC, was to, basically just go out and innovate. There was a lot of things that were going on in the gaming industry. There was a lot of things that were really the technology, which was really not capable of doing it, prior to say 2015, 16, somewhere in there, really started to evolve in 2018. And so General Quast, the ATC commander at the time, basically took a group of folks and to establish an attachment in Austin, Texas, and basically told them to run with scissors and, try and innovate. And any sort of innovative techniques or concepts that came out of that, then we would look at for scaling. And you can kind of see the picture there. The plywood, you got kind of a gaming system, all commercial off the shelf parts, gaming chair, like literally one of those driving chairs, put together with whatever was the state of the art headset at the time. And then on the right there, you kind of see what's at every UPT base. There's 60 to 65 of these at each of the UPT bases. For the Air Force, and this is a critical part of their syllabus. And so when that detachment was set up in 18 and moved to Randolph Air Force Base outside San Antonio in 2019, they really started to gain some lessons from that. And really the biggest lesson, which is not all that cosmic, is we wanted to train the pilots better first, and then faster when able. So the efficiencies we knew would come. But some proven innovation concepts started to come out of that. So trying to enable that seamless access to content as early as practical, get it in the hands of the airmen so they can start to learn, and then have it be seamless as far as their ability to access it. Integrate immersive technology. We'll come back to that. The most visible thing from that, it would be the immersive training devices. Transition to a student-centered learning, really have the student kind of take control of their own training, and be, kind of responsible for that and have agency in their training. Deliver quality instruction. Really, you could put that one on top. Like I said, that one was always kind of at the forefront. Was the better IPs you have, the better students you have. It's just a fact that's been proven over time. It works for teachers. It works for any industry. And then the last one was human performance optimization. And those were kind of some of the initial proven concepts that the detachment came up with. The detachment then through the Air Force there and through DIU, and I'll let Alex talk to that in a second. The first commercial solutions opening was placed out there in 2020, or actually I think it was in 2019, but awarded in 2020 to really get after pilot training transformation. And I'll let Alex talk to kind of how that piece looked.
Yeah, and so that's kind of where DIU got involved, and as TJ said, I think the initial stage of kind of curating the problem set and doing the diligence and preparing kind of to launch the commercial solutions opening, which is the process that DIU uses to bring vendors on contract to work on these problem sets. That happened in early or late 2019, early 2020, actually, yeah, right before COVID. So everyone always is impressed when, essentially all throughout COVID, these guys, Vertex and everybody else, just had their heads down, working, building, and trying to meet the deadlines despite all the insanity with supply chains and stuff like that. But so in 2020, the solicitations went out, and we brought it was 4 companies came on contract to deliver the kind of total technology stack, which we'll look at a little bit more in detail later. But that it includes a lot more than just the immersive technologies and the hardware, as you kind of see displayed here. There's network architecture that was prototyped. There's some AI instructional tools that were prototyped, and some learning management software as well. So in general, really it was this idea to fully transform the syllabus and the curriculum, to really modernize the program and innovate as much as possible. And that was accomplished it took about 18 months before the first devices started showing up at the bases. And then it was about 2 years until the whole architecture got its ATO and was beginning to actually field at all of the undergraduate pilot training bases. So, just to emphasize the speed that the Air Force was able to move in collaboration with DIU and our partners here to get this mainly commercial off-the-shelf technology. So that's I think the other thing to emphasize at the beginning here. It's not quite as COTS as the left side of the figure there, but even on the right side, we're still talking minimal engineering required. It was a lot of integration of just kind of best in class HMDs, PCs, and then looking at the center graphic, we went and pulled the Lockheed product Prepare 3D, which was in a really good position at the time to serve the needs of kind of the basic flying training competencies that we were trying to get after. And so again, not a lot of development trying to take high TRL technologies and just field those very quickly to start getting after this problem. And then I think what we can see here now is there is an evolution to all of this technology that, like we've said before, we're trying to keep pace with. And so starting on the left side with that really fully commercial off-the-shelf type device with just the integration of the sled and putting all the pieces together. And then now, if you look to the right, actually implementing MR and putting together some custom physical cockpits for aircrew to interact with so that they can start executing things like emergency procedures, checklist procedures, crew resource management. That's what that multi-place mixed reality device is kind of designed around, is to actually begin to, it's intended to replace the actual simulator for the TH1H sometime early next year. And then all the way over to the right is now getting after the tactical training and fast jet training, which previously was just never possible with these sorts of devices. So the evolution, I think, is exciting, and I think there's even more to come, which we'll talk about a little bit. But had to start somewhere, and that's what kind of all along the way, Vertex and our other partners have done a really great job of keeping pace with the needs as well as the developments from industry. TJ, do you want to add anything to this slide?
No, but I did see a question, that came up, and it was on the, getting this into a secure environment. And you can see the F-16 there on the right, and there's other, we've done a B-52, although it was just for refueling, so that's kind of the next thing, is to, work these into a secure environment. And, products like, Varjo, TAA compliant headset, that's good. All parts and all software made in Finland. So NATO, soon to be NATO partner, I guess, or actually I think Finland's in, it's Sweden we're waiting on. But anyway, point is, so that there is, some work to do that. Initially to be kind of air gapped, to get those into that kind of secure environment. DIU's been working directly With us, it is a little bit more tricky, and certainly into the IL6 environment, for the cloud, or to be able to have it be online in a secure environment, is going to be a little bit step further down the road. I don't know if Alex, if you want to talk to that one anymore, but I just thought we'd address that one while it was up.
Yes, no, certainly. I mean, that's obviously the one of the exciting next places that we could take all of this technology. I think it was intentional that we started with undergraduate pilot training in an unclassified environment so that we could capitalize on all the flexibility of just commercial off-the-shelf components, and not have to worry too much about exactly where we're sourcing some of, like we've got all sorts of different headsets we were trying out previously, and recently have kind of settled, at least for now, on the Varjo headset as best in class for the sorts of use cases we need it for right now. But in order just to allow the flexibility, we did try to keep it unclass as long as possible. Now that we're able to, we think, deliver the kind of training capabilities that would be needed in the operational environment, we are certainly looking towards kind of developing those air-gapped solutions, making sure that we think long and hard about what sort of parts we're sourcing. And that is just going to depend on really our defense partners driving that demand signal. So DIU's been talking to a lot of potential partners that would be interested in shepherding some of this through an ATO. Anybody that knows anything about that four-letter word knows that people are going to try to avoid that to the max extent possible. But now that we are actually working on an F-16 version of this, I think that possibility is coming to the forefront. And we do look to begin working on some of those accreditation and compliance issues for not only the hardware, but also the software prototypes we're working on to be able to do that classified training in these devices, hopefully pretty soon.
Okay, awesome. And then there's some other questions I see are popping up, but we can hit those as we go through it. Yeah, so just to kind of reiterate, and some of this we've already talked to, and I see some of these are popping up in the questions, but this push into the kind of the lightweight, small footprint. You got no projectors, no screens. Trying to keep these things where basically you don't have to build a building, with special air conditioning, special power considerations. These things, you plug them into the wall. It's basically a gaming system. Plug it into the wall, normal HVAC. Really, it kind of changes the paradigm of how you can utilize these. Instead of having the sim building that was somewhere down the road and you had to go get your one slot and there were hundreds of students trying to use the 4 simulators that were on base. Now you've got, 65 training devices that are embedded into your squadron, maybe all consolidated into, a room that's very nearby or actually literally in the flight room. So that's a big deal. And then, you can get ATD, FTD, FFS level avionics and aerodynamics, incorporate an OFP in them, with the graphics, that's work that's underway right now. And speaking of that, and I saw there's a question on FAA certifications, and that is, for that mixed reality, one that we showed earlier for the TH-1H, that's a pursuit, is to get that in FTD level 7 rotary certification. So there are others that have ATD level certification. So that's all possible. Especially now you get, good motion cueing because they're small footprint. You don't have to build and have all the, hydraulic systems or whatever, you can do these with small, gaming system type actuators to get after the motion to try and get that, 6 DOF or, 3 DOF or 4 DOF, level of fidelity. Same thing in the force feedback, a lot of technology that is advanced over time to get that. So now the big change or big push recently, and Alex talked to it, was getting into mixed reality. So you see your hand, see your crewmate. If it's a multi-place, you can see your kneeboard, etc. Then you look out the window and you get all the things that are good about the full immersive virtual environment. I think that's a real key to moving forward. It's definitely a key to the FAA certifications. And then on the motion cueing, because of the immersion, you can actually using kind of, tricking the vestibular system a little bit through the stereographic, nature of the HMDs, you can actually create that motion, with the HMD, which is something you really can't pull off on a 2-dimensional screen that's out, that's on a projector outside of the cockpit. Then the last thing there is the increased flexibility. As the platform changes, whether it's prepared 3D or Unreal Engine 5 or X-Plane, whatever, X-Plane 12, X-Plane 13 or whatever, the next one that comes out, you can really make those changes in some cases very easily, and then all the plugins and add-ins, whether that's additional terrain, weather, threats, weapons, that kind of stuff can all be kind of added in after the fact, relatively easily. And due to the changes within the gaming system and the amount of investment and time that's being put into that, really there's a lot of really neat third-party stuff that applies to this. So very flexible system, lightweight, and fairly affordable, that has been deployed pretty well by the Air Force. Back to you, Alex.
Yeah. So then from the government perspective here, obviously the one of the important requirements from the very start was to try to develop a modular system, something that serves as a base platform that we can build up on. And so that's exactly what we've kind of done. And this graphic on the right kind of shows the design of that, where you can have that common ITD that is just a VR device that can, you can essentially plug in any software to, and you can have a stick and a throttle and interact on a basic level. And then what we're working on now, so you can see on that top graphic there. So start with the VR, which would be that common ITD. We call that transition. That's kind of fully out in the field, ready to go. You can just, any government partner could go out and buy those now using the success memo that was offered from the DIU prototype contract. And then now we're working on these two additional versions. You can think of it as like a PTT 2.0 and PTT 3.0. So the multi-seat mixed reality, which is for the TH, taking actually these sleds, putting 3 of them together, and then putting a full TH1 cockpit around it. So that kind of demonstrates the modularity of the system. And then here is the video here is just showing what we're working on for the T38 version. And then, again, with the intent of just trying to make it as flexible and scalable as possible in the future. So I just take the opportunity to kind of talk about what we're working on again right now, and I think some of the initial next steps. So the Air Force, this was a Chief of Staff of the Air Force directed program to actually consolidate all of the T-38C, initial fighter training essentially into a single program, a single course called Fighter Bomber Fundamentals. In that, he tasked actually Detachment 24, the pilot training next guys, the same ones that built the early devices back in 2018, to test out. So now we're back working with pilot training next, Detachment 24, to in parallel to developing the new curriculum for this, is develop these new mixed reality training devices for the T-38. And then instead of simply or just focusing this time on the hardware solution and just making sure we have the immersive technology right, we also, down at that second line of effort, is to actually prototype a new synthetic environment or simulation environment to be able to support the kind of high fidelity modeling and graphics that would be required to be able to do fast jet training. So that's what you can see on the right here. So this is the latest vendor to kind of join the ecosystem on a DIU contract, and that's Maitreya Simulations, actually out of Sweden, Swedish-based company that is, has been working on this. Is based in an Unreal 5 environment, but then heavily modified to be able to support the sort of training that you can see here. So really just stunning graphics, visuals, and a really nice environment that I think we're going to be able to build on and leverage, like TJ said, a lot of third-party developers to come in, and that that is really what the what Maitreya has been excited about, is kind of try to build a platform that then, build a huge developer ecosystem to really scale up the capabilities, incorporating things like, AI agents and, other aircraft developers, modeling, all that stuff. So again, very early stages of this, we're only a couple months into the prototyping, but The intent is to field these devices next fall, or even perhaps in the summer. So late summer of 24 is kind of when we need to begin delivering some of this stuff for fighter bomber fundamentals. So again, moving real quick, and we'll kind of, hopefully everybody can kind of flight follow this and see where they can get involved. Yeah, so that kind of just brings us to the big picture view here of the overall technology stack that the government has been working on for the past several years. And again, as you can see, there's a lot more than just the devices themselves, and even more than just that simulation layer down in the bottom right, where we're talking about Maitreya's NOR environment is kind of that new simulation environment that we're excited about. There's also, on the right side, there's a network and data management layer. And, that's important to mention just because anybody that's worked on government networks knows that the latency usually isn't the best. And there's a lot of firewalls and different things like that that make it tough to get throughput. So one of the important things that was prototyped, back in the original PTT contract was a network solution that would enable VR content to actually, operate over a commercial cloud. And it's ATO'd now for an IL4 cloud environment. And that's where a lot of the sim telemetry gets pumped into. That's where, the intelligent tutor that was also prototyped, that's where that kind of interacts with the system. And that's also where the learning management software that was developed by CAE and iPerformix, that's where all of that lives. So, again, a really, really important feature to the whole architecture is that digital backbone, as we call it. And I think there's a lot of opportunity, again, for other network solutions like that across the Air Force, things like MOTAR, whatever. There's plenty of other folks across the DoD that are working on similar things that, again, based on just the fact that it is built with a standard API management layer, can really talk to anything. So I think, again, that's an exciting way for this to kind of level up and build on itself, is to integrate a lot of the other applications that are being developed across the DoD. Yeah, so then kind of where that brings us to is, we talk about all this cool stuff, look at what we've been doing the past couple of years, and then the question is it even working? Does this even, address the need? Are we creating pilots faster and better and all that kind of stuff? And so the answer is, kind of with the standard caveats, yes. I think there is absolutely no argument now that we are able to use this technology to increase training efficiency. And as TJ said, we want to train better and then, faster when able. So there's been a lot of reluctance towards the idea of actually cutting training hours, and that's understandable. So for now, really the government's been focusing on, how can we use these systems as augmenting capabilities without actually having to, pull away any flight time or pull away any simulator events. That being said, they did take the step with the T1 to begin to divest it and turn that into a sim-only course. And that has been very effective. TJ can talk a little bit more about that because he's been more involved in that. But the bottom line is, in testing, we've been able to reduce aspects of the early syllabus. So the things like getting to your initial solo by roughly, anywhere from 1 to 2/3 faster. And just with that, just by accelerating the early pipeline, you're able to get to, just because of how expensive it is these days to fly aircraft, you're able to get to roughly, on the left side there, hundreds of millions of dollars in annual savings, just by accelerating that portion of the training pipeline. So that just kind of shows the scale of how effective this could be financially, and then also, just seeing this as an augmenting capability to really enhance the access to virtual training simulator flights and stuff like that. I think kind of hands down really is an overall win for the pilot training community. TJ, do you want to talk a little more to the numbers on the right?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, like you mentioned, like Alex mentioned, the Air Force through the PTN model, not just immersive training, but everything that was done in those proven innovation concepts. They tested a couple of classes, against traditionally trained students, and the time to solo, had come down by about 50%. The ability to get to the simulators or immersive training devices early and often in training, just really, really helps in that initial phase, for ab initio type of students. And then what you can do by doing that, trying to start at a higher level and then reduce the amount of regression that you have in between sorties. And then that really allows you to do proficiency reallocation where, you're getting after more complex concepts and competencies because you're getting through some of the basics. I can remember first flights in aircraft or first flight overall where basically I don't think I learned anything because I was hanging onto the back of the aircraft. But now, because you get to after these reps and sets on the ground, you've already got kind of a baseline. You've already talked on radios. You've already seen some of the local area because you can get real terrain for where they're flying, and so you already have that familiarization. You're actually learning in that first sortie as opposed to just trying to get a dollar ride under your belt. So that proficiency reallocation kind of allows you to get after those advanced concepts a lot sooner. Some tests were done, 14 of 14 categories. The T6 students outperformed their non-immersive peers. We award, the Air Force awards pilot training wings, essentially 4 to 6 months earlier. Now there's still training they have to do, to be clear, but, by awarding them wings and putting those on their chest, they're certifying them to fly in the national airspace as pilots. And then, for the T1 side, with the T1 going away, it was replaced by simulators, essentially a simulator-based program. You were getting the pilots out and off to their follow-on aircraft, their FTUs, 2 to 3 months earlier, and really seeing no difference in the pilots. And so when you can do that, it's both, quicker, get after that, it's just as effective, and you're getting after it with more efficiency. And it's not just the Air Force. Embry-Riddle also saw a 30% reduction in time to solo, and then overall awarding pilots licenses, sooner. So there's a lot of very promising early results in this, and more to follow. I'd like to see a really comprehensive study done, with real controls in place, etc., to really get after this, because I personally think this is the the future of flight training. It's just a very good match with the immersive environment in flying training. Next slide. Yeah, so you can talk to this one, Alex.
Sure. Yeah, I was just gonna kind of start with kind of what the intent of this one is, and I also wanted to we need to or should mention that you mentioned the T1, and that also is that uses a mixed reality device, kind of similar in look and feel to this one here that you're seeing for the T1, and that has been actually. Those devices are actually out at the pilot training bases, and students are beginning to go through this new AMFS Air Mobility Fundamental Simulator Only course, doing a lot of the training events, obviously in the legacy sim, but also in these types of devices, and seeing a lot of benefit from it. So yeah, just again to say that there's that use case, that example of the T1 divestiture and transitioning training into XR and simulator environments. And then now what we're doing with the TH1H, this was a contract that was again awarded to Vertex last year to essentially take the base platform of the common ITD and then use that as a starting point to develop this device you see here, which obviously is highly interactive, is essentially a full cockpit replica where everything on the outside is VR, and then you look inside and you're able to see your hands and manipulate all the switches and execute all of your emergency procedures training, crew resource management training, and even working towards things like NVG rides and stuff like that. So they're working very closely with the 23rd Flying Training Squadron to get this accepted as the sole only training device for the helicopter training next syllabus, which is really a big leap, and also just speaks to, I think, the the general kind of feelings around this technology within the government is we're really leaning forward on this stuff. As TJ mentioned, we're looking to try to get FAA certification for this. That obviously is a whole nother can of worms that is going to be a big nut to crack. And I know that the FAA is also seriously interested in all this technology, but this is one of those interesting examples where the DoD is probably the best place to start with this, because we kind of get to certify our own devices and decide if they're good enough for syllabus training, whereas the FAA has a lot more restrictions. So I'm hoping that this project right here that you're looking at will kind of serve as a pioneering example of what we expect to see in the future. TJ?
Yeah, and then just taking that into the commercial, as well. I mean, this, obviously you're saying one here that's a rotary, but could be anything, and so I think there's some questions. Are the commercial entities pursuing this? Short answer is not too much right now. I think they kind of dabble in it. There's some products that they use that are more into the kind of part task trainer, but as far as getting after the there's a lot of FAA restrictions, and it's going to take a while before that would be, fully incorporated, to kind of work around that. I will say, for the new class of aircraft that are come out, the eVTOLs, electronic vertical takeoff and landing, I sit on a board through the SAE where they're talking about those standards, and they're really starting from scratch with immersive training being very integral part of how that training is done. So I could see, for those that class of aircraft or whatever, that's going to be the standard, and you're not going to see the $40 million sim to fly a couple $1 million eVTOL. So very interesting time right now, and a lot of technology that's finally caught up, to what it needs to be, and so that's kind of where we see it going forward as well. So we share DIU's perspective on that, and I'm sure Varjo's.
Yeah, I can say a couple things about that. Varjo has been working very closely with a European company called VRM, now called Loft Dynamics, that has actually got a Robinson helicopter simulator certified with EASA, which is the European FAA equivalent, and that will allow a pilot candidate to actually log hours in the simulator as if they would if they were flying the real helicopter. And so that happened about a year ago, and those systems are kind of in operation. And just this week, there was an announcement that the FAA is going to work with Loft Dynamics to look at certification issues here on how they could use this helmet-mounted display technology to provide alternative means of meeting these pilot training requirements at a lower cost. So there's a lot going on right now. There's a lot of interest from the airlines themselves in trying to find reduced ways of not only training new pilots, but also the recertification requirements. So I think you'll see a lot more of that coming here in the next year or so.
Yeah, and I think we probably want to get to questions here in a second. So I'll just say something real quick, kind of from the government perspective, where we are looking ahead, and kind of what we're looking to next from industry to partner with us to continue to kind of get after these problems that you've heard us talk about today. We've talked about the possibility of kind of these programs being a disruptor to kind of the traditional way of training using simulators and kind of the more expensive dome style projection simulators. I think that is something that's on the roadmap, and we're looking to, just like for the TH1, rather than buying brand new simulator devices or full flight simulators, is see what we can get out of these lower cost XR simulators. And kind of put those hand in hand, at least for a little while, and see where we can go. But that's still several years out, and we've still got a lot of great full motion sims that we're going to continue to use because we've got those contracts in place. So initially, it's really, I think, what you can see out of that T-38 fighter bomber fundamentals is saying, what can we actually bring to bear in terms of operational training, mission rehearsal training, tactical training, and getting it into that classified realm. So you can actually stick these devices in vaults, go in there and do mission rehearsal, or get after classified TTPs. So I think leveraging these next gen simulation environments, and as well as all the other plugins and applications, weapon systems, and things like that might be able to work hand in hand with this kind of technology stack we've been working on. That, I think, is what we're looking to do in the next couple of years. And so we're looking for any and all involvement from all of our partners out there, whether it be through future contracts or not. Look forward to working with everybody.
All right. So I think at this point, we are going to transition to the Q&A portion of this. And so thank you for everyone that has submitted questions in here. What I'm going to go through is I'll address some of these directly, and I'll combine a few of these together to try to answer them. So let's start off with this. So there's a question about what do trainee pilots actually fly if the T1s are going to go away? So could someone touch on T1 and what's happening there?
You want me to hit that, Alex, or you want to tackle it?
Yeah, sure. I think you probably have been a little bit more involved in that than I have. Go for it.
Yeah, so as mentioned on the slides, the divestment's kind of underway, if you will, now until 2025. The game plan was to replace with the simulator-based training. So they get their wings out of T6s, and then they'll transition to the T1. The T1 sim is not going away, so the T96 is what that's called. They will fly that, and they'll do this program called Air Mobility Fundamentals, which is being scaled right now by the Air Force. And so that is a kind of a spectrum of devices, but really what the Air Force has called a mid-tier device, which is it's a Redbird as far as the 6-DOF motion that it has, and then it's got XR setup inside where they fly that, and then that is used to augment what they do in the T96, which is the traditional T1 sim. And then they get that training that they need for air mobility fundamentals, and then they head off to their FTUs for their follow-on aircraft. And it's about a 3-month program. Used to take 6 to 7 months to finish up the T, or probably about 6 months to finish the T1. Now they're done in about 3 months, and like I said, with not any appreciable difference that has been measured. Very careful to say that has been measured for those trainees. So that's the answer to that one.
Thanks. Next one here. So there's a couple of questions here about augmented reality and augmented reality headsets, and also about using augmented reality in the aircraft. I mean, similar to what Red 6 is doing. Can you guys either of you talk about the what's happening there, and if that's something that you guys are seeing for the future?
Yeah, so I can talk to it a little bit. I mean, certainly we're interested in a lot of the augmented reality solutions. As from DIU, obviously we work on a lot of stuff other than just flying training. So I think there's a lot of really fascinating use cases for augmented reality in like tactical realm, like special operations forces or in maintenance, and whatever. You can think of a million of these, and we actually have an ongoing solicitation. Well, I think that one closed, and we're working on the contracts right now, called tactical augmented reality. So certainly very interested in that technology. As far as it goes for flying training, I think what we're first trying to suss out is how immersive, how accurate can we get these training systems using VR and MR on the ground in kind of that safe and reliable environment of sitting in your flight room or whatever in one of these devices, and do the benefits of having augmented reality in the air. At this point, does that kind of outweigh all the benefits of what we can do in a slightly simpler environment on the ground? I think a lot of what we're seeing from companies like Red 6 is really exciting, really cool opportunities for practicing things like air fueling in the air without actually having to get close to another aircraft, stuff like that. So I think there's a future for that type of technology, certainly. But as you can see from just the presentation today, we've really been focusing more on the VR MR and trying to kind of squeeze as much as we possibly can out of that technology without dabbling too much in augmented reality at this point.
Great. So a couple questions in here also about VR induced sickness, simulator sickness and things, and if there's any specific specifications, requirements, functionality that you've got in there, and any comments about what you've seen in terms of that and what you've done to potentially eliminate it.
I'm not super familiar with all of the issues with VR sickness, to be honest, except that I know that there's a lot of questions about motion, and sometimes motion can accentuate, or in other cases, I think might even be able to help the issue of VR sickness. So I think the jury's still out on that. We're a big fan, at least, my team at DIU working on these programs and at AETC of, trying to keep things as simple as possible. And so that's one of the reasons we've elected to kind of forego a lot of motion options on the stuff we're working on right now, just to keep complexity down and see if it can still kind of deliver the same training objectives, and with hopes of that also kind of limiting VR sickness and stuff. But I don't know, TJ, you've been in this space a little bit longer than I have. What are kind of the thoughts on VR sickness?
Yeah, I mean, it's, obviously, cyber sickness, VR sickness, whatever, but, there's been, and part of that human optimization, that was some stuff that PTN actually did look at. What I'll say, just kind of my own personal experience with it, and to your point, cyber sickness comes from a bunch of things, that if there's any sort of lag rate with the latency or if the resolution. So, when I first came into this space in 2018, 2019, I'd put them on and within about 20 minutes, I'd have to take them off, take a breather. And I will say that the technology has come a long way to where that lag and that latency, there's a couple of things that are going on there. If it's moving, your head's moving, but the visuals are not moving, it tricks your brain a little bit. And the second thing is you're focused about 2 inches from your eyes, but you're actually looking at something that's far off in the horizon. And all that really causes some problems for your cranium. So by getting after better resolution, getting after lower latency rates, in other words, where you don't have that lag there, I really don't notice it anymore. I could put on a headset nowadays and really don't notice it one bit. Whereas like literally just 4 years ago, there was a lot of issues there. So, and then the motion thing, like you mentioned, if it's perfectly synced with it, it actually helps for cyber sickness. If it's not, and you get a bit of a disconnect between what you're feeling and what you're seeing, that'll cause problems as well. But I've not seen as much of an issue with that recently, just due to the technology advances.
I think I can add one thing on there, that with Varjo headsets, we put eye trackers on all the devices. And the first thing that happens when you put the headset on is that the eye tracker will calculate the interpupillary distance, and then it will physically move the lenses to match what your IPD is. And so if you have a properly adjusted interpupillary distance, that dramatically decreases simulator sickness that we've seen in the past. So that's one of the things that we put into the headsets to try to help to eliminate that. Next question here, and we talked about this a little bit, but there's talk about game engines and image generators, and kind of what runtime engines are used in there, and then about database development for that in terms of producing the terrain and things. Any additional comments? I mean, we talked about Prepared 3D and then moving to NOR and Unreal 5. Anything more you guys have to add there?
All I'll say is that, I mean, based on what we're seeing from the capabilities of things like, even Prepared version 6, and then also what we're seeing out of NOR, the idea of being able to run the simulation environment on just a high-end PC with like a, NVIDIA 4090 or something like that is really what we're trying to ensure we can maintain for these kind of devices. So getting away from that server rack and the costs associated with maintaining and procuring that. So what we'd like to see is the devices of the future be able to run on a PC, or maybe a couple PCs, one for each HMD or something like that. So I think in the MPMR, TJ, correct me if I'm wrong, but there's like 3 PCs running those 3 different crew stations. Is that accurate?
One for each station, one's a host and 2 clients. And then you got an iOS out there, instructor operating station.
Yeah, so I mean, that just kind of means, in our latest solicitation, we did say, utilize commercial game engines to the max extent possible, because that's kind of where you're able to get there. We're not discarding the idea of traditional image generators and stuff like that, but I think what we've been able to see out of these like Unreal 5 based, or I think Unity has been making some moves in this space as well to leverage their game engine towards kind of high-end flying training and stuff like that. So it seems like we're going to be able to get there with these lighter weight, I guess you could call them, solutions for simulation environments. And we're going to kind of keep pushing that button until we decide we need to go a different direction.
I think we certainly still see, lots of the traditional image generators still use their in other areas. So, for example, Echelon's PC Nova is supporting a number of Navy programs in this, and Quantum 3D is still around working a variety of different projects. So most of these have developed solutions that support both virtual and mixed reality solutions, where you're able to take the video and mix that together so that you can actually interact with physical objects while you're immersed in a virtual environment. Let's see, next thing here is some questions about the MPMR and being able to see with and interact with the other the pilot and the co-pilot, and also if these devices run on separate instances, or with running in multiplayer mode on the same PC. I mean, so any comments on on that technology with the multiplayer capabilities?
Yeah, I mean, that's essentially it. I mean, it's you tie in each of the computers through multiplayer, and with the video pass through, you're able to see and if your crewmate does an action, obviously you want to have that action happen at real time in your cockpit, so that there's no difference or lag or whatever between that. And because it's mixed reality, you can actually physically see the switch, and there's only one switch, as opposed to if it was 2 people in a virtual reality, then you'd obviously have to have that be a multiplayer in the same environment. So, but that's essentially how it works. And like I said, we're actually going through testing on that right now, just to kind of refine that. We do another test at Fort Novacell in August, which used to be at Fort Rucker in Alabama, and more to follow on that. But so far, early results are very good. And then, so not just multiplayer, but also multi-ship, right? So being able to fly formation, tying 2 of these together. I mean, already the immersive training devices, they'll put them into a pattern and do pattern ops. For those that went to pilot training, used to stand around and walk around in the pattern with tape on the floor and whatnot. Now you can do that by tying in a bunch of immersive training devices, flying on the same pattern together, et cetera. And then with things that Maitreya has been working on with this NOR system, getting actual really, really good, especially in Unreal, formation cues from the other aircraft, to include, you can even see hand gestures, assuming the person's hands are, within that, within the realm of where you can see them, where you can see things like that. So I know that was a question that I saw in the questions as well. So yeah, very, very interesting stuff that you can do that really wasn't possible in simulators in the past.
Yeah, I was, I kind of brushed over it when we were talking about fighter bomber fundamentals, but something like 80% of that syllabus for the simulator events. So 80% of the simulator events, which is probably like what 40% of the syllabus, is going to be accomplished in the ITDs. And that's because, you know, assuming they work as advertised or as planned, but that's because you're going to be able to put a student and an instructor up in the area in NOR and actually be able to fly formation and train to formation using that system and you know, go through the hand gestures and then even go into things like BFM, ACM, do some basic surface attack patterns and stuff like that. So a lot of training tasks that were previously either kind of sketchy in the traditional sim or just not possible at all, we're going to be able to do in these new devices, you know. And then, you know, we may not be able to do all the emergency procedures stuff. That's what we've got the legacy sim for. But for the tactical events, I think these devices are going to be really, really useful for all that. So, yeah, I think that's an exciting thing on the horizon.
Excellent. So we're down to our time here, and so kind of the last question that we'll be able to answer here live is that numerous questions in here about why Varjo and specific capabilities that Varjo has that positions them for this. Any comments there?
Well, you know, I was a customer before. Sorry, Alex, if you're about to answer, but I was a customer before I was working for Vertex, and working with Vertex. You know, I had an opportunity to try out all of them. We did a fly off, and you know, frankly, it was the best one with the advances in the focal edition. You know, and getting after the visuals within there. Really, just there wasn't really a much of a question, you know. And I don't want to sound like a shill for Varjo, but you know, honestly, it was the best one that was out there. The TAA compliance going forward, you know, is something that you know is just going to be critical. There's not a lot of these that are allowed into a classified environment, and that would be one that at least has that requirement met. So anyway, that's what I'll throw out there, Alex.
Yeah, I guess I'll be a little bit more diplomatic in my answer, but you know, so certainly the government hasn't like, you know, chosen any sort of enterprise HMD for all these sorts of devices yet. I mean, each and every time we build a new device or, you know, do one of these contracts, we go through and kind of reevaluate all of the existing solutions out there. And yeah, I mean, at least for the latest two that I've been a part of, we've evaluated that the Varjo MR system is the XR3 and the focal is kind of best in class for the requirements that we have. So they're continuing to kind of really push the envelope, I think. And we certainly appreciate it because it's given us access to a lot of the training requirements that we need to get after. But certainly if another company comes in and disrupts the space, we'll evaluate and implement if that's the best one. So definitely continue competing, continue pushing the envelope. I think this is certainly one of the more exciting technology domains in terms of like, you know, acceleration and development of this stuff with the, you know, the way GPUs are moving and stuff like that. So I think, you know, the next 5 years will be really fun, at least from the government perspective, to take a look at all the cool stuff that's being built.
Well, we're certainly looking forward to that. So Alex, DJ, thank you very much for supporting our efforts today. Really appreciate you taking the time to enlighten us on what's going on here. And so we're going to conclude at this point. If attendees need additional information, please feel free to reach out. You can use the contact information and websites that are shown here, or reach out directly to on the company websites. So thank you very much. I really appreciate everyone's attention. Great questions. There's still questions coming in. We will have a look at this after, and it looks like we're going to have to answer some of these offline. But again, thank you all very much, and you all have a great day.